Yeah, we have to honor the process and not the results, and praise ourselves for the process, because we're, like you've said many times, Barbara, we are building a new operating system here. It's going to take time. We're reworking our brain. We're reworking our thinking process, and just to learn to stop, to feel, to breathe, to step into the witness, to honor the small steps is so crucial. There's another thing you've always said that was very helpful too, Barbara, and that is using the term, is this regenerative or is this degenerative? And so when you get in those moments of, oh, I'm not kind enough, or this feels awkward, because when we're growing, it's going to feel awkward because we're doing something different. And so we'll feel a little bit awkward. Just ask yourself, is this a regenerative step or a degenerative step? And if it's regenerative, then it's probably good for the whole.
Yes. And so in this instance, the phone rings, you see it's him, you let it go to voicemail, which is actually making a decision for the good of all, but you're still feeling crappy, you're still thinking bad thoughts, but you've made that decision, so you have to...
Right. Good point. That happens in the free will. Okay, Robin, this feels awkward because you pride yourself on doing a good job and not letting people down, and so you've brought up a good point, Barbara, that it was, okay, this feels awkward, but you're only stopping the degenerative part. I was still planning to hear the voicemail and respond to what was needed, but I didn't have to put myself on the phone for 20 minutes
right.
in a degenerative state.
Right. And in the case of my kitchen dishes conflict, what it turned out was a year of this. I mean, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed to even talk about it to anybody who knew conflict resolution. But what happened when I finally got the aha moment in the miracle was I was talking to my sister about it. And she reminded me that when I was little, my mother used to work long hours, and I would clean up the whole kitchen, and she would come home after a 12-hour workday, find the one thing that I didn't do, and yell at me. And when I got that, I was able to go back to my roommate, and I started the conversation. Hey, Jules, would you mind if we had and she got a little defensive, and and then suddenly I'm weeping. And we are having the best conversation about, she's like, don't ever, ever, ever not tell me these things. So we built trust, and it was all this divine timing. And since then, our relationship has deepened so much that I don't want her to go. I used to, I'm glad I have a roommate. I love Julie, but gee, I wished I lived alone. Now I'm like, no, don't leave me. But anyway, okay, Cathy, let's go back to you and tell me what happened, because I'm curious to know after we talked and you had this thing happen with Tammy, but what about this conflict with your son-in-law?
Well, let me just close up the conflict we were working called being blocked in all directions.
Okay.
And not only because my question was then, what is my truth? So what is my truth with Tammy follows into my what is my truth with my family. So not only did my being able to tell her the truth that I didn't trust her and why I didn't, that helped to open up the tensions and the blocks between my relationship with Tammy.
Yeah.
So that was a big breakthrough. And what it did was it helped her. We did more converse on her stuff, and she was feeling like she had a breakthrough to realize that, this one incident where I was blocking her and everybody else was blocking her. Now she feels like, this is a core issue that she feeling people blocking her from all directions from her abundance. Now maybe that will be the key to open up those blocks and start the healing on all levels so that she can get her abundance on all levels. So then going back to what is my truth, when I come back to the story with Craig and Lori, maybe Craig was threatening to commit suicide, and instead of my being so angry with him and frustrated and thinking he's the evil man, what if he's that person who is showing Lori that she can be a different way? So Lori no longer wants to commit suicide. She wants to figure out how to get through her life, without so much conflict. But the fact that he is threatening and she is saying, no, don't do this, that's their conflict. So I'm thinking all along that this is their problem, when in truth, my truth is, my biggest fear and my deepest, core issue is my fear of dying, no longer being there. So going through that, then I feel like I'm able to look at my issues of dying, where originally with my first husband, he was threatening to kill me, and then now chemo is threatening to kill me, cancer is threatening to kill me. So how do I get what I want in life? And yet now I'm realizing that I don't need cancer anymore to get me what I want out of life. So I'm still processing all of this.
Yeah, wow.
But see how this all tied together, and it was all this weekend. It was like, woo!
Well, and
and that's when you called me, you through it.
Just a little backstory is that you've been dealing with Lori, who has been suicidal. And she's just recently decided that she wants to live, and she's been struggling to establish life for herself and making better decisions. And Craig is basically committing this slow suicide in front of everyone. And
thank you for articulating.
Yes, and what you and I talked about was Craig is Lori's, as Carlos Castaneda used to call it, petty tyrant. Craig is the impetus that is pushing her. He's giving her the platform to rise above that behavior in herself, and he's playing an important role for her right now, even though it may not end up that they end up married. He might kill himself. He might not. So now you're seeing Lori changing her life, and obviously influenced by being raised by a father, watching the father trying to kill the mother and do harm to her. Now she's breaking that pattern, and now it's coming back to you, who are on chemo for cancer. And we've done a little bit of work since you've been diagnosed and you chose to get chemo around that. But I have to say, yesterday or whatever day we did that was really breathtaking, because I know you want to live. But it seemed like when we revolved, and then now we're going to get to the last revolution of the sound bites, is what if he's not here anymore? What if you're not here anymore? Well, I want to be here.
Right.
I want to live.
Like I said, I was thinking it was all their problem and didn't even realize what a core issue I was bringing to the surface of my own.
Yes.
Very powerful.
Yes. And so going back to my little quick conflict, I'm miscommunicating. I'm making assumptions. And so when I asked myself, what assumptions are you making? Where are you not communicating well? And I just sat down and thought about it. Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, you assumed they canceled the appointment. You didn't really communicate well on why she couldn't come at 5 o'clock. I could have communicated better on there. And then when I sat back to say to the universe, show me now as I move forward where I make assumptions. I make assumptions all day long. And at that moment, every time I started to make an assumption about Maxine or Judy, I stopped. And I said, wait a minute, show me what the answer to this question is. Why did we have to do it in person? Well, I assumed that Maxine or Judy was just, had this curiosity and wanted to take advantage of. No! Why? And then I realized she had never seen a channel. This was a lifelong goal of hers, to actually be in the presence of somebody who channels, because she's heard about them, she's read them, Maxine has told her, and now here's this woman who she trusts because she's Maxine's one of her best friends. And it's really important for her to get there at 4 o'clock to be in the same space, because this may not come again. So when I realized that, without making an assumption about why she had to have it in person, and then it came to me, So even though I thought it was best for the good of the whole if they took the money, that extra money she made wasn't nearly as important as getting to that appointment where she could be in the presence of a channel. So I did this, and it was like a treasure hunt. And instead of there was no shame involved, there was no degenerative voices in my head saying, what's wrong with you? You always make assumptions. There was no icky feeling. It was all this joy of discovery. And by the time Maxine came the next day to take me to the airport, she too, but she was observing and making different decisions and thinking different thoughts and feeling and breathing, and we were able to put together all of our assumptions, and we got the big picture. And we were just like, oh my gosh, look at this. We never would have been able to do this without conflict resolution. And then it carried on when I went to New Orleans, and the second day I was there, my friend never called me back. So I could use this, not make assumptions, not respond, and the long and the short of it was I had her phone blocked. I didn't even know it. Now, had I done this big thing about, well, she's kind of an alcoholic, and she's codependent, and is, lying, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't. I had a great time, even though she wasn't there. In this case, Cathy, as you're moving forward, no, let's go to Robin, because this is kind of a little more evolved conflict. That when you found those places in your love life where you were pessimistic and hopeless, what was the where did that take you?
And that's such a beauty about conflict resolution, Barbara, because you end up solving something that's often very deep and meaningful to you, and that's why the emotion is so strong. So in my case, I had to look at how do I build up hopefulness in my life, and to first realize that this is something that I truly valued and wanted in my life, and had not been successful in, and that was sad. That was creating a sense of hopelessness. And pessimistic thinking is often aligned with when we feel personally flawed. We will not be able to think optimistically. And in my case, I was feeling unworthy and unlovable, and it sent me back to doing some inner child healing work. And for being hopeful, I then work towards setting some goals, like we talked about back in January.
Yes.
Setting goals and pathways that were achievable for me and that worked for me. And I'm still working on these things, but I'm much more hopeful and optimistic now because I could see the problem clearly, which I may not have been able to do without this conflict resolution process.
Without Mr. Downer?
Yeah, without Mr. Downer.
God bless him.
And that's where we have to say, how can we be grateful? And I just want to say, Cathy, you're so brave to come on the show and talk about these vulnerable things that you're right in the middle of.
Yeah.
And just acknowledge that, because this conflict that I'm sharing, I have been working on for a year. And anyway, I'm just excited for you and the beautiful things that are going to unfold. And I'm just busy, with the work now and coming back to going into the witness. How is this going? Am I feeling and breathing and paying attention to those thoughts, not letting myself tell myself I'm flawed and unworthy and unlovable. So.
Well,
Go
thank
ahead.
you, Robin. And for me, the process of Conrev is just amazingly powerful. And when we go forward creating our life, my main goal is to consistently ask to be aware. I want to be aware of when I'm not telling the truth to other people, but especially to myself. I want to be aware when I'm feeling fear and sorry for myself and afraid of not being here anymore. So just being able to step back and be that witness, be that observer who can see when I'm cheating myself out of a lovely life because of all my bullshit.